when you see him on screen, you know that he loves Maya. Like, you see that. But there's also this feeling that he's going to double cross her or he's going to end up killing her. And getting to episode 5 where he confronts her and he's like, if you're not going to join me, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to destroy you.
Maya.
And it's
I love him.
There's a struggle with Wilson Fisk because he kind of is like an anti-hero, but he always leans to the villain because you see that he has empathy.
He's such a child,
at times,
right?
Yes,
he's literally he's just a hurt little boy all the time.
All the time, and you just hope, like, man, Wilson, just figure out your shit and
go to therapy, dude. Go to therapy. Hello and welcome to the movie podcast spoiler-filled discussion of Marvel Studios' Echo. My name is Daniel. I am one of your hosts today, and joining alongside me, it's Anthony. Hi, Anthony.
I thought you were going to call me your fellow Echo. Echo.
No, you're not my Echo. You know, we're the original sound. Like that's us. You're not my Echo. We make the sound, and everything else is the Echo.
Yeah, we're the legitimate masterpiece of a soundtrack. We are one.
Yes. Exactly. You know who is an Echo though today? Shabazz, who is not on this episode. Yeah. So his voice will just echo out right now. We muted him. He's not here. But we will give a Shabazz, and I'll echo that out in the episode. So it just reverberates around you wherever you're listening to this episode of the movie podcast. Anthony, how is your day going today?
Going great. I think it's just been a really busy week for us. We have a lot of content coming out, and we're just planning and getting things done. We have some really crazy guests showing up on our show this week. And yeah, like it doesn't stop here at the movie podcast. It's constantly working.
It does not stop. No, you're right. And yeah, speaking of crazy guests, we have tomorrow, if you're listening to this on the day of release, because why wouldn't you want to? Tomorrow on the movie podcast, Thursday, January 11th, we have Kevin Hart joining us. And he's alongside his producing partner and the chairman of Heartbeat, Brian Smiley. Like, oh my gosh, we have Kevin Hart joining us on the show. We have some other guests joining us later this week, which you'll see very, very soon on the movie podcast. And then the coming weeks, there's going to be a lot of changes. We're going to have some main episodes. We're going to have some new initiatives that we're going to be really championing. So if you're a fan of the movie podcast and you're looking forward to main episodes returning, we got your back. Don't worry. We got one coming for you very, very soon, with some new changes. Like I was saying, we're very excited to talk all about that and more. But like Anthony said, yeah, it does not stop here, but we're so grateful to be doing what we're doing. Staying busy is what we do best, apparently, and we're going to keep doing that for you. But today is all about Marvel Studios' Echo, which is streaming now on Disney+. We were thinking about doing a spoiler-free review, but given that this is a rare occasion where the entire show is out in one shot, all 5 episodes, we're like, let's just, give it an extra day and let's talk about the entire series.
Yeah, I think this is something that I've been waiting for Disney to do for a really long time, because I do like the appointment type of viewing, but I hope for this type of viewing as well, because I just like binge watching a lot of shows, and this is the first time we get to do a Marvel series where we just binge watch it right away. I know they did, they came close to it with the recent animated What If season 2, where it was like an advent calendar of every day leading up to Christmas. But
what chocolate am I getting today? Oh, it's this episode. Cool.
This was nice. It was a nice surprise.
It was a nice surprise, and I think a show like Echo, which we're going to be getting to very shortly, benefits from that, because you are getting a complete story. It's like you are reading a graphic novel beginning to end, and that story being told. And for this scenario, it works. The last show that comes to mind, and I know there's been more, but I know last year, The Bear season 2 was another one that just released everything all at once, which again, it will work. Sometimes it doesn't, but let us know what you think. We're so curious. Did you prefer, all episodes of Echo coming out at once, or do you prefer a weekly release? I know with shows like WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki, it works really well because you're building it every week. But with a character like Echo, who people may not know as much about, may work to this advantage. So we're going to get into all of that and more. But this is the movie podcast. You can catch lots of episodes all the time on our feed, whether it's on audio podcast feeds or on YouTube. If you're seeing our lovely faces right now, that's because you are on YouTube and you can subscribe and you can leave a comment. Look how gorgeous Anthony's face is right there. How could you not want to see that? So make sure you check us out on YouTube. We have lots of incredible episodes, lots of great interviews that you could see in a visual medium. Also, if you want to follow us on social media platforms, you 100% could do that. We would love if you did. You can follow us on Instagram, X, TikTok, and so many more. Everything you need to know is in the show notes below, including our Discord. If you want to talk about Echo and so many more shows and movies and entertainment, that's the best place to do it. We have a great community building in there. Now, Echo, like I said, is out now. I want to say thank you to our friends at Disney for, sharing the episodes with us, for inviting us to do some interviews, which you could check out right now in the movie podcast feed. Those came out earlier this year, I say earlier this year, it's January 10th. A couple days ago, those came out. It feels like months ago that we released that episode.
It does.
It feels so long ago. That just tripped me out. I'm like, it's like the end of January, right? And I'm like, no, it's January 10th.
Yeah.
So that's where our heads are at right now. But we're also going to be part of the Echo Carpet tonight in Toronto. So if you want to check out all of our coverage from that, we will be talking to some of the stars of the show in person on the carpet. We love doing those. Make sure you check us out on our socials. That's where you'll be able to see all of that lovely, lovely content. Now, Echo is based on, obviously, the Marvel character of the same name. We were introduced to Maya Lopez in Hawkeye, which came out in 2021. My goodness, time is very, very strange. But she is back. Wilson Fisk is back, who we are also reintroduced in Hawkeye. And not only that, we are reintroduced to Charlie Cox, returning as Daredevil. So great. We're going to get into all of that and more because this is spoiler-filled discussion. We warned you, if you've made it this far into this episode, spoilers are coming. But Anthony, I would love for you to get us started off. There's lots of different points that we're going to be touching on today, but give us your first overall thoughts to Marvel Studios' Echo.
I enjoyed my time with Echo. It is a series that I did not expect to like as much. We came off Loki in 2023, and I totally forgot that Marvel was releasing Echo as a TV series. And I think we got the screeners back in December. And I was kind of like, man, I totally forgot about this show. And the moment I put it on, it's just like, it brought me back to a time where I would watch Daredevil or Jessica Jones on Netflix. It had this aura of like what we kind of experienced 5 years ago, 6 years ago on Netflix, and it's brought into a Disney environment. So it was strange, but it was a nice and refreshing look at what the Marvel universe can look like for a mature audience. I really enjoyed the storyline for Echo. There are, it's not the most perfect story, but it's also quick and it's to the point, and it gives enough story for someone who's you don't really need a lengthy season for. You get an idea of who Echo is. If you're really interested in what she did after Wilson Fisk, this show and how they kind of marketed under this Marvel spotlight is just enough information to understand where this character went after Hawkeye. So it just gave you that enough punch as well as grittiness and brutality, because it is a more mature themed story. There are people who
don't want you to forget it. They don't want you to forget it. And all the marketing, it's like, viewer discretion is advised. And it's like, yeah, that's wicked. Like, lead with that, because that's what, like you were saying, Anthony, that Netflix vibe of what people have been, waiting for or wanting to return after all this time.
It has a great indigenous story. And I love that. I think we got Killers of the Flower Moon last year. We're leading into 2024 with Echo, and then we're going to go into True Detective, which also is another indigenous story. I just really enjoy this culture and what they bring to the screen. I think it's so different and it's refreshing, and I think a lot of people don't appreciate it. They undervalue it, and I think there's a lot to it that I really took away from it.
Yeah, and we also had the episode of What If, where Devery Jacobs, who's in this series, plays Kahori, which is like the first indigenous superhero in the MCU. So it's really cool to see that. And I'm exactly like, I'm right with you there, Anthony, where these are stories that often get overlooked. So to have their presence in the MCU, on the biggest stage basically in the world for entertainment that everybody recognizes, I think we need more of that. And I'm glad that a show like Echo can exist and tell those stories.
Yeah, and I think, when we talked to Sydney Freeman and she was telling us all about, well, a lot of the cast had to learn sign language, and a lot of the cast were deaf, and a lot of the cast were Aboriginal or indigenous, and you have a lot of representation, and it's on screen for the first time, behind the camera, in front of the camera. I think that's just, it's nice to see, because you get tired of the same type of storyline of Captain America, of Iron Man, of the Hulk, or this and that. Like, it's just felt so different, and it felt very mature, and that's what I liked about the story. The biggest thing I took away from it is it was so quick and short that I actually wanted to see more. It was one of those
Right.
shows that you can clearly see, yeah, I had a couple of struggles in the beginning, but as it kept going, it was getting better and better. And it just gave you that vibe of like, man, if it's had another season or two, this show would get better and better. And there's a lot of like criticism online about what this show represents, and it really, like, the Marvel universe is so different and so unique. I was a little bit hesitant into understanding how this type of maturity would fit into what we've been experiencing for the past 20 years, but it worked so well. And now that we have everything in continuity, I would love to see more mature type of storylines like this, rather than end of the world explosion sci-fi-ness that sometimes it just goes over your head and becomes too geeky and nerdy. I really love the grounded Ed Brubaker type of storyline where, hey, we don't have to show everything that's happening. Let's just create characters, have them live their lives, and of course they also take part in the MCU.
What I think is so interesting about where Echo begins is that new banner that Marvel is doing. Marvel has been trying a lot. Obviously, with Disney Plus, we had the shows used to open up with the same Marvel banner, and a lot of them still do with that Marvel fanfare. And then we got a Marvel special presentation, which we got like something like Werewolf by Night, which I loved, which is such a cool story to tell. Again, not something that's tied to the larger MCU, but a story that can exist. And these are characters that existed throughout for decades in Marvel Comics. And we have someone like Echo who's now launching a new banner, Marvel Spotlight, where this should set the expectation. And I think that's the expectation that people need to be set. People are looking at Echo, be like, okay, where's people? And again, I'm giving a blanket statement, and I'm guilty of this too, and we're guilty of this too, where it's like, okay, Echo's the next story. And for years, we've been told whatever comes next will tease what's coming next. So it's like, okay, we're getting Echo. Where's Kang? Where's the Fantastic Four? Where's Doctor Doom? No, that's not what Echo is at all. Marvel Spotlight is a place to showcase and to shine a spotlight on characters that may not show up in the films or may not show up in the larger stories that we're being told, but there's still stories that I think are worth telling. And Maya Lopez's story is that. And I love that we have a platform to learn more about her lineage, her family. There's some truly badass moments in the 5th episode where she really is understanding her lineage and the line of women that she comes from. And when she's standing up to Wilson Fisk at the end, I got goosebumps in that moment where you just see them all lined up there. I was like, oh, damn. That was such a hype moment for me. And I was like, this is really cool. This is really well done. This is a really cool way of showing, who she is, where she comes from, and why she can stand toe to toe with someone like Wilson Fisk. That was a really cool moment. And also, Anthony, you mentioned the accessibility, which is really cool to show how a lot of the show is done through American Sign Language. And there's a moment in the show where Wilson Fisk, again, it feels we're talking spoilers, but we warned you. There's a moment where like Wilson just comes in and like literally gives her like a contact lens. And when he's talking, she sees like almost like a hologram of somebody performing sign language as he's talking, because he doesn't want any barriers between them, because up to this point in the show, someone has been there with Wilson to be their interpreter, which again is so cool to see that in the show. And then for them to showcase it differently in the show, I'm like, oh wow, that's cool that they're showing things differently, and they're still being, inclusive and showing that accessibility, but also doing it in an MCU technology way. And I'm like, yeah, why not? If technology could do, if technology could open up portals to the past and teleport you to different areas of the multiverse, why can't it make it more accessible for a hero to understand what people are saying? And I think that was really, really cool way of showing that. It really is a much more singular story, because this is really Maya coming to terms with her past, coming to terms with her community, but also just trying to find a path forward. And those of you coming in wanting this to be a Daredevil show, I think the action is up there with Daredevil. I think the fights that Daredevil comes in that first episode is on par with anything that we've seen in the Netflix series that Matt Murdock has done. It is an awesome fight. It is so cool. And it just made me like feverish, like just wanting to have Daredevil show up in the MCU again properly and just kick ass and just be bloody and, be a Catholic filled with guilt and not knowing what to do, and just, it's great. I mean,
that's how we feel every day, Catholics. Except shame.
We're just like Catholics full of guilt. That's exactly what we are. We watch Daredevil and we're like, yeah, I get it, man, I get it. We're just chained to the tower and the top. No, but it's great, and like and even though the show is so singular, because Echo, a character, is tied to people like Kingpin and to Daredevil, it's great to see them show up. But again, them showing up is not the crux of the show. This is a show about Maya, and I think Alaqua Cox is so damn good. She's given so much more to do, and the first episode or two are really reintroducing her to audiences, what's going on, what the stakes are, where she come from before. But after that, it really opens up to the larger community, and you have a great supporting cast like Chaske Spencer and Devery Jacobs, who are great supporting members. And Greene, who's great, and Maya's grandmother, who I'm blanking on her name right now, but she's just so great in this series, and it's I'm really love the characters. I think that's what Marvel's always done so well, is introduce great characters, get great actors to play them, and Echo is full of that.
I want to talk about Alaqua Cox because her performance is all physical, right? She's using sign language, but she's using her face to showcase emotion, showcase fear, showcase surprise, showcase anger. That is something very difficult to do as a person who can't emote that through voice. So when you see her, she is on another level of acting at that point, because she is emoting everything, but you don't hear it, but you see it and you feel it. And I think that's such a new way, like it's just such a new way of seeing an actor and an actress on screen. And I do enjoy her presence on the screen, because it feels like when she's hurt, I'm hurt. When she's angry, I sense it. I see it. I see the violence in her eyes. I see all that. And the way it was captured, it really showcased her depth as this character. And I think it's the first time we've ever seen someone like this on screen, who's completely deaf, who's using American Sign, but is also the main star of a series. That's something that's new. I know we've had movies in the past, but this is different. This is a completely different element. And I think the undertaking for her was huge. And I really appreciate what we saw from her on screen, especially she's also in an action sequence with Daredevil. She's fighting. She has a missing leg. Like, there's so much that she's doing that I cannot sit here and say, well, that's boring. I'm super appreciative of that, because that's something I've never seen on screen.
Yeah, and so actually, just really quickly before we continue, Tantoo Cardinal is the actress that I was trying to think of her name. Great in this series. But yeah, and that's the thing, right? I mean, Echo, I really think it's something that people need to temper their expectations on, because you have a really good show, but people may be going into this, and again, I say people, we're including in that, going into the show, we're like, okay, is this going to be, Diet Daredevil, or what is this going to be? Like, no, this is Echo. This is Maya Lopez. This is her story. This is a new leaf for what Marvel can be on Disney Plus, where we could tell these stories that don't need to have world-ending stakes. episode 5 of this series does not have world-ending stakes. This is a person versus a person, and it's not even a massive fight. It's a battle for their soul, really. And I just really appreciated that you could have something that revolves around the Choctaw community that is bringing these characters together, and that they could exist, and they could, they're part of this larger world of the MCU, but they're also living their day-to-day lives, and they're telling the story, and I really appreciate that. But yeah, Alaqua Cox, she rocks. She's so good. It's awesome that she gets a lot more to do than she did in Hawkeye, because obviously Hawkeye is balancing a lot. That's also a different era of the MCU where we have, Jeremy Renner coming back. We're introducing Haley Steinfeld. We're reintroducing Kingpin, who doesn't really show up until the last episode or two. So there's so much that Hawkeye was doing, trying to connect to the larger MCU, where Echo benefits from being this is just a smaller story that we're telling. And I think that's what's great. And it's 5 episodes. It's really easy to get through because the episodes are only about 30 to 40 minutes long. So you could pretty much watch this in one night. But I'm the same as you, Anthony. When this show ended, I'm like, damn, I could have had another couple episodes, or I hope that we revisit this series because there's such a wealth of storytelling that I think that we could pull from here.
Yeah, and especially with Wilson Fisk, is when you see him on screen, you know that he loves Maya. Like, you see that. But there's also this feeling that he's going to double cross her, or he's going to end up killing her. And getting to episode 5 where he confronts her and he's like, if you're not going to join me, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to destroy you.
Maya.
And it's
I love him.
There's a struggle with Wilson Fisk because he kind of is like an anti-hero, but he always leans to the villain, because you see that he has empathy.
He's such a child,
times,
right?
Yes.
He's literally he's just a hurt little boy all the time.
All the time. And you just hope, like, man, Wilson, just figure out your shit and
go to therapy, dude. Go to therapy.
Well, does Maya cure him of this lingering anger that just sits into his soul, that the way he is and the way he carries the hammer with him, the hammer that he kills his father with? Does she heal him of that? And does he now become more of a good person? Or is he still the Wilson Fisk that we know and hate, but we like to see?
Hate to love. Now, I'm curious for you, Anthony. There is an after credits, because of course this is an MCU show, so they still are going to give you a little taste of what's to come, which you get at the very, very end of the show. We get Wilson Fisk on a plane, watching a news broadcast saying, like, is anyone going to step up? Literally, that news broadcaster, whoever was talking, they were literally just asking, like, is anybody want a challenge to be the mayor? And then Kingpin's just like, I'm thinking I'm back. Like, he literally feels like it's like a John Wick moment. But it's so, like, I found it so funny how much they were like hamming up that, like, yeah, we need a leader who's going to come in. It's anybody's race. We need somebody who's a brawler. Yeah. I'm like, hey guys, can you just name drop Wilson Fisk? You know what I mean? It was just funny how they were teeing that up.
No, I enjoyed it. Wilson Fisk as mayor has always been like a big part of the comic books. It's like when Lex Luthor became president.
Yep.
Wilson Fisk becoming mayor is a huge part of the MCU, and it's a huge part of Spider-Man's like presence, because they went toe to toe. Even in the video game, Spider-Man and Wilson Fisk, and in the game, he's mayor, right? Like, he is the mayor of. Is he not the mayor? In the
I don't.
Was he leading up to a mayor?
I think he may have been mayor at one point. Now I'm blanking out on it.
But
I'll find out. I'll look into this right now.
It's nice to see, because Daredevil has always, been Wilson Fisk's villain. But it's also, Wilson Fisk is a lot of people's villains. And especially in New York, he's also Spider-Man's villain. He's, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. He's a lot of people's villains.
It was Norman Osborn who was the mayor in the Spider-Man games. Totally.
Was he like in the beginning? You remember?
Yeah, he was mayor, but yeah, Wilson Fisk was like, he had his like Wilson Fisk like.
Okay, so maybe it was just I was living in a different universe.
Yeah, no, but like, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they lead to that. Yeah, unless I'm missing it right now, but yeah, I don't think he was mayor. It was Norman Osborn who was mayor.
But it's nice to see that, even though this is, not the biggest MCU crossover, they're still continuing that continuity of like, hey,
Yeah.
he's going back to New York. Guess who's in New York? Daredevil's in New York. He's going to become mayor. Who knows who shows up? But it's nice to see that even though that this is not the biggest crossover event, the people behind this show is always thinking of the bigger and grander universe, which is it's good to see.
Now, stick with me on this. Right now, there's a rumor that Drew Goddard, who is the creator of the Netflix series of Daredevil, is the one that Marvel is looking at right now to continue the Spider-Man films. Now, Wilson Fisk going back to New York, we're getting Daredevil Born Again kind of being re-looked at on how it's being released. There's going to be a lot of reshoots and kind of re-finagling of what that series is going to be. It'd be so cool to have a Daredevil series where we see Wilson Fisk running for mayor, and then if we get a Spider-Man movie, hopefully have Daredevil show up, hopefully have Kingpin show up as the mayor, and make a Spider-Man film that's a lot more grounded, a lot more street level, which Spider-Man has traditionally really been, but also in the MCU, he's been part of these larger world-ending events. But it'd be really cool to have a more grounded Spider-Man story with Daredevil. He knows who Matt Murdock is. Matt Murdock may not know who he is now, but there's some really cool cards that Marvel could start playing now that they have access to the larger MCU. And now that, the Daredevil series has been, officially canonized into, the larger MCU with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and all of that, I'm really curious to see where the street level world goes to now with, with all the cards that are in play.
Yeah, it's interesting because going into this new Daredevil series, which I think is being rebuilt from the ground up,
born again.
Born again.
Yeah.
could this story be, Daredevil trying to take down Wilson Fisk before he becomes mayor, but realizes maybe he's a good mayor, maybe he realizes he's just trying to do New York good, or is it actually like this, masterpiece of a villainy takeover? I am so down for a team up of everyone from the Netflix series, Punisher, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage,
like a Defender series.
Just
again.
Create that Defender series. I'm so down for it because I think they've established enough and everything has been part of it's canonized in the MCU. But I think you really need Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Spider-Man they've always put him in this, like, the Green Goblin and all these other guys, but he's also a big part of the New York, and for him not to show up on the street level type of storyline, if I find it always like a lost element of him, because it's like, it's not always
it's such a silly reason. It's such a rights reason, right? It's such a, like, oh, we can't show up because it's Sony and this. Like, I remember when Hawkeye was coming out, Hawkeye was finishing the same week that Spider-Man No Way Home was coming out, and I'm like, oh man, imagine, because they're both at Christmas time, imagine like in oh my gosh, where was
Times
the finale?
Square? Or not Times Square,
Times
where
Square,
the skating rink is, right?
Like 30 Rock is and everything, right?
Yes.
Like there, and like, oh, it'd be so cool to see like Spider-Man swing by or coming in, like, because like you open it up, that world, to that possibility, right? So you're always wondering like who could show up, who could not show up. Here we are again talking about who could show up in the MCU, and Echo is not that series at all, but we're just talking future plans. But just to bring things full circle with Echo, we could just give our quick final recommendations. For myself, it's check it out, watch it. If you love the MCU, you're gonna fall in love with the new character, and because it's such a small commitment episode wise, and all of them are there, give it a shot. Give it the first few episodes to see if you're vibing with it or not. But I think there's a lot there for you to fall in love with it, if not just for the Indigenous story that I think is really strong in this, and seeing those connections and those visuals, it's great. And I think Alaqua Cox does such a great job.
Yeah, same here. I really enjoyed the pacing of it. The story, it's quick, it's short. These episodes are not super long, and they're not super wordy. And really, that first episode sets the precedent of the rest, because you're given Daredevil, you're given an action sequence, you're understanding who Maya Lopez is, and within maybe 2.5 hours, you're done the series. I think that's fantastic. It's like a movie, but it's also a TV series at the same time. So I think it is a watch. It's not like the end of the world MCU explosion that you might be accustomed to, but I think this is a great character build of a MCU character that we haven't seen in a very long time since the Netflix series of shows.
Very, very true. That was our spoiler discussion on Marvel Studios Echo. Again, if you want to keep the conversation going, make sure you join us on Discord. Or show notes below will get you there, as well as all of the other incredible social media platforms that you could follow us on. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. A like goes a long way for us, so please, we really want to grow on YouTube. We want you to see our faces more, so please help us grow our subscribers. We had a huge year of growth last year, and hopefully we'll continue this year. So thank you so much for that. Thank you to Disney again for sending us the episodes of Echo. Make sure you check out all of our interviews, our red carpet coverage, everything going on, and we have lots more coming on the movie podcast for shows, movies, TV, everything. There's lots to look forward to. Just follow us on socials. That's the best place to see what's going on with everything that's going on here in the show. That was this time with the movie podcast, and we'll see you next.